We are not really putting our full focus on the issues in computing that are holding us back from our most explosive growth. We need to shift our focus to a cheaper, cleaner form of computing if we want to continue melding it into the most integral parts of our lives. We need to support more renewable forms of energy and realize how environmental damage could wreak havoc on our posterity, our productivity, and our current way of life. We have environmental damages occurring due to the production, use, and disposal of computing. We could reimagine the way that computing is being done for it to be more environmentally friendly. We've always made computing to be effective, but not essentially eco-friendly. But due to computing's high rate of use, we could bring attention to environmental issues that could soon plague humanity. When I say clean computing, I want to see computing become more biodegradable, renewable, and eco-friendly. This could be accomplished through its general perception, manufacturing, disposal, and current use. If we do this, we will be enabling ourselves to move past our industrial bonds and our pollutant ways, and also create a new form of sustainable economy. We need to continue the movement of cleaner computing to usher in a new page of human innovation. If we're able to at least start laying the frameworks of mimicking true lifelike systems, then we will gain huge insights into our functioning world, and we can progress towards a brighter future. I don't have a presentation, but I'm going to be discussing computing's contribution factors to some environmental damage. For each era that we have, they slowly progress towards an end. And I think that computing is beginning to move past some of its more pollutant ways. Computing has been contributing to environmental damage because of the way that we've been designing it. We've allowed this to continue because many of us are not aware of the impact that computing has had, and we have allowed the sacrifice of our planet for the sake of productivity. Our e-waste has becoming one of the fastest growing solid waste avenues in the world today. E-waste would be considered our small and large appliances, batteries, and technology. Computing makes up for more than half of the e-waste. Technology is being more globally adopted, manufactured, and more often disregarded. It is created with resource and energy-intensive methods that are not effective. When it is recycled, which is only 13% of the time, it is done ineffectively, improperly, and it causes human health problems and damage to the environment in the process. All of this is adding up to piles of e-waste that will soon, This is just adding up to mountains of e-waste from many facets of the computing and technology industry worldwide. Computing manufacturing has a negative impact on the environment due to the precious metals and the amount of them to produce our computers, phone, tablets, and other electronic devices. These things are taxing. To create a desktop computer, it's been said it's almost as resource intensive as making a car and or a refrigerator. The water that is used in computing alone has to be incredibly sanitized. It takes a lot of it. I read an article that was slightly dated, but it said it took 10 gallons of water to produce one computer chip. The data was older than 5 years old, so I chose not to use it, but I felt like this was still worth saying. Microchips have to be cleaned and sanitized with each layer that is etched into them. And since some of these crevices are smaller than a wavelength, that means any mineral inside the water would be like a boulder on this chip. So we have to use water that is not even recommended for human consumption. It is so clean, and it has to be dirtied before it is put back into the system. We are not getting the most of our resources when it comes to computing. There are so many who are uneducated about the boxes on their desk and the devices in their hands that oftentimes when an inexperienced user suffers something as simple as a hard drive failure, they'll buy a new system and throw all of those resources out the door. This pattern stands to why we need to include more technology educational programs in schools. Stands to its integration into the core curriculum and other alternative institutions so people can be more informed about their greatly needed devices and how to maintain and properly care for them. Also, if the general public was more informed about the waste and production issues within computing, they'd be more conscientious about their decisions when it comes to the handling and preparation of their devices. If computer manufacturers were required to include stickers on the sides of their devices and explain the resources that it took to make them and how improper disposal causes harm to human health, then I think Also, in addition to making this information widely publicly available, then we would see a change in consumer thought process. For many, they just do not know, and companies are not really willing to broadcast this. Not only do we have heavy resource used to produce computing, but the running of our computing systems today is very, very taxing. The heat generated by computing needs to be addressed. We have to expend massive amounts of electricity to constantly cool our computing systems. And with the continuation of high-performance computing, we are only going to see this trend worsen. Sorry, one moment, please. The internet itself consumes massive amounts of electricity, which, primarily fueled on the backbone of oil and coal energy, is making our highest and most pervasive accessibility knowledge tool since the Gutenberg press a contender for environmental damage. To put this in further perspective, Greenpeace has been estimating that by 2020, our data centers will demand more electricity than is currently demanded by France, Brazil, Canada, and Germany combined. It seems that our thirst for knowledge has led us to create an energy-chugging monster of mammoth proportions. Data centers and the processing of data, which is exponentially skyrocketing alongside our ability to process it. I almost think of it like a Moore's law of data generation alongside processor speed. We'll only see this problem compound as people hop onto the internet and start to use it in their daily lives as computing and technology becomes globalized. With more cloud-based computing and big data rising in popularity as a company concept, it is imperative that we discuss the use in the daily lives of our technologies. And we need to discuss how we store and handle data and combat the energy cost upon us. We need to promote the modularity of all devices. When the first computer was conceived, there's not much work that an individual could do for them, primarily due to it being 2 tons in the size of a room. There was always someone running around and changing vacuum tubes, and as time has continued, however, we can now purchase a computer, take it home, and change out any parts that we want. Hell, we can even make one from scratch. But we can't do this with our regular devices. I'm going to take the time to address a personal qualm of mine. It always seems slightly asinine to me that people would tell me that a website is a greener option. To clarify, unless you are using a web hosting and the supported technologies that are behind it are from renewable sources, you are chopping off the tops of mountains in order to get to the bottom of coal mines in order to create electricity. I'm going to now discuss the advances to be made and the benefits of the lifelike technologies in our current industries today. If we can encourage further growth in cheaper, cleaner, more natural computing in a way, we will be able to bring huge innovations to our more elusive fields, more adaptable and lifelike robots. This could spur advancements in space exploration technologies as we would be able to use more surrogates. Our ability to distribute information could also be changed, and just the biomedical and prosthetic industry alone could be touched like this. Clean computing can be a game changer for eco-friendly and environmental movements because of the fact that computing is used worldwide and in so many industries. For technology to begin making the steps to be more heavily integrated into our bodies, such as in the biomedical prosthetic industries, we need to seriously consider the applicability of natural technologies to these fields. We have different industries that are actually contending in the fight for eco-friendly technologies. Nanocomputing is the field that you might not have considered. Nanocomputing can be used to purify our environments in the water, soil, and air, and actual nanotechnology is used in solar cells to make them flexible and lightweight. Nanotechnology is actually being utilized in batteries as well. They're making them more effective, less flammable, and hold their charges for longer. The 3D printing industry is using PLA plastics, which is only going to further increase the use of more environmentally friendly based devices. Sustainability goes hand in hand with the maker attitude. To do stuff for oneself is the same concept as sustainability. Lifelike technologies can help bridge the gap between computing and physics-based computing. Physics is about finding out about how life works, the gears that turn the meaning of existence and life itself. And technology needs to start taking steps to being that. It would create easier pathways of innovation between the two obviously linked fields. For every time we have an advancement in our physics and technological knowledge, we are able to have advancements for the human species. For example, gaining understanding in electromagnetism and magnetism in general, alongside technology, helped to create the MRI machine. These machines have helped us gain knowledge about the functionality and these chemicals and how they work inside of our brains in the last 20 years than we've had all knowledge of all time. And this is due to advancements of computing and science. We have all been taught since an early age that the Earth used to contain one super landmass called Pangaea. So many of us will commonly accept this, but then scoff at the thought of our future and current landmasses changing. It is almost inevitable that our current landmasses will be different for the future. Whether this is due to tectonic plate shifting or environmental changes, our technology needs to adapt for the future and must be able to handle these types of changes. Currently, it cannot. Internet, emergency communication systems, telephone systems, and electrical grid systems could all be potentially put at risk due to the environmental hazards and complications. If we experience more turbulent weather and environmental change, then we will experience failures within these systems. I recently attended DEF CON, and one of the most bone-chilling things that I have ever heard in my life was a speaker playing a recording of a woman calling 911. A terrified woman's voice came on the phone as she pled with them to come, her voice quavering as she tried to be strong and provided information about her husband's current condition and where she was. She was begging her husband to cling to life as she saw his face change colors. She kept repeating about how she couldn't lose him and that he needed to hang on just for her. The love and desperation that was in her voice was something that will never leave the echoes of my mind. This was not the bone-chilling moment. The DEF CON talks were on the TVs this year, so I was in my room, and when I heard her call back, my heart dropped and I started crying because she was frantic. She was stuck waiting for her husband as he clung to life, and her last words before she got off the phone was a panicked, "Please hurry." I do not know if that man survived, but to hear the devastation and human duress that issues within our communication systems, like the internet, telephone, and emergency system can cause while they quite literally put human lives at risk is heartbreaking. A fact that I remember also from that talk is that communication systems went down for roughly 8 to 12 hours. Over the span of that time in multiple states, one woman called them 37 times within an hour because a man was trying to get inside of her home. I don't know if he knew of the down systems or not. Failures like these can obviously inspire anarchist behavior if these situations are allowed to unfold. And for us to experience loss in these systems is immense and life-threatening. Flooding of salt waters and flooding of the earth could easily cause failures within these systems, and it just stands as to why technology needs to become more natural. The digital revolution is only affecting a certain percentage of our planet. As technology becomes more internationally and globally adopted, we will have to deal with the crisis in technology at a larger and larger scale. The waste, toxins, hazards to workers, and huge resources that are needed to make computing run are only going to compound. We cannot simply expect computing to continue on this trend if it is to be effective. If we use, I'm going to now discuss the economical advantages. I mentioned a sustainable economy, and I will be explaining that. If we used more renewable energy sources, we would spend less time in production because we do not have to waste our time processing the materials we harvest from the planet. Electricity is generated by wind as it sweeps across fields. Hydroelectric dams generate power with the flow of water, and solar panels can pick up our sun's rays. We also have power in geothermal, where we utilize the heat from the earth, and we can also use biomass, which is where animal and plant waste materials are burned as a form of energy. These can include easily leftover plant substances like corn stalk. The reason that green energy forms are not being adopted is the resistance of politicians, lobbyists for their contending companies. There is resistance in the acceptance of continued environmental damage by many, And along with the American people, not, oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking at the USA-based center of it all. And also, it's the American people not calling more attention to these issues and demanding more action for them. The president is practically a figurehead with limited power, and our representatives are representative of ourselves. Sorry. If we want to actually see actual change begin with these type of environmental policies, it is time we started demanding it. This is the duty of the American people. Even if you can do simple things like recycle everything that you have, even if you don't want to use compost for your own garden, start a compost and then give it to a local eco garden. If we do all of this and work to create a brighter future for our children, we will create a more sustainable and better world for them. But we need to change our ways first. To lessen our trash output while simultaneously helping our economy, we could theoretically begin to create many of our own manufacturing resources from the waste that we produce while employing more people, because recycling is far more labor intensive at same or the less cost of traditional disposal methods. That's good to say. It was once complained that recycling programs took more money because they were more labor intensive. We have seen the successful implementation of a statewide recycling program where even schools are forced to have full-scale recycling and sustainability plans in place in New York. And the program ran, there were so many, many benefits. If we were able to see more regulations like this, we could see major benefits to our own economies. It almost seems odd to me that so many are resistant to these ideas or are not taking the steps to adopt them. If we take our current waste, the biggest export in the United States, and refurbish them, so we are saving ourselves vital resources, putting more people to work while simultaneously conserving plants, dumping less into landfills for less of this than the cost of regular disposal methods if it is managed properly, while creating our own manufacturing resources at the same time.
I'd like to say that one of the biggest solutions to this problem is open source hardware and software.
That's what I'm building. Oh, I'm sorry. You gotta wait till I get to the end. Shh. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to shush you. Yeah, well, actually, yeah, I was, because I just did. But, the United States is seriously lagging in our adoption of green energy forms. While we have seen small increases in the adoption of these energies, we have largely allowed our political structure, culture, and society to cloud our logic of the adoption of these type of energy disposal methods, production, manufacturing types of things, from recycling to handling our e-waste and disposal of our old total trash. With the dropping prices in solar energies and alternative energies like it, it's coming to a point where we need to begin to take this into serious consideration. There are quite a few countries within the European Union that are 45% powered by completely renewable resources. We, a global superpower, have about 12% renewable resources, and only 10% of that is actually being effectively utilized. There are many benefits to renewable energies. They have little to no emission, improve public health, the environmental quality versus the older generating methods are immense. This is all while creating a vast, resilient, reliable, and inexhaustible new energy supply. With encouragements and large-scale recycling programs that are labor-intensive and will put more American people to work, while making an economy sustainable, more self-independent in our energy production and our own commercial manufacturing, I think it needs to be contended that renewable energies and large-scale recycling methods are officially utilized. If you place solar panels on your home and powered your home with renewable energies and did more than what was required of your home, you could make money by selling power to the electric company while lessening your bills. The reasons to contend against renewable energies from day by day are shrinking as the cost of alternative energies drop and the damage, pollutant, and toxicity levels in our environments continue to rise. Solar energy dropped in 19% in price in 2013. It's done so 12% in this year, and then is projected for this trend to continue through 2016. I can address some of the other questions. I know that there will be some, but we'll have to wait towards the end. We will need to begin, We need to begin working towards lessening the negative impact of the growth of the human species. We can do this by not only changing the way that we take care of our current ways, but the ingredients that we could produce it with, which could have a hand in how we produce technology. For the brevity of this presentation, I will only be addressing plastic lightly, which is when it's disposed of and sent to landfills, it can take years for these plastics to degrade. There have been new plastics that are being integrated that now only take 2 to 3 months to degrade, and it just depends on the type of plastic that you're utilizing. If we made active, conscientious decisions for companies to use these types of plastics, we could help having more of the negative style plastics going into landfills, of which they will continue to go into landfills. We need to work to replenish the resources that we need to further our own development. With a population boom expected in 2050 that will take the human species to 9 billion, we need to start implementing smarter plans of living that for us, or we will soon, probably well before the population boom, go to war over resources. Eco-friendly ways and sustainability initiatives are ways to conserve while we rebuild our resource supplies and prepare better plans for waste, e-waste, and human impact upon the planet. If we lose this planet, folks, there's really no way for us to get it back. We are on a rock that's covered in an atmosphere with a hole in it, sitting in a vacuum of space that's expanding in a constantly expanding cosmos that we have little to no technological or true scientific advancements for us to freely go and explore to travel. To put some things in perspective, if we lose our environment, our ecosystem, our plants and our animals, we too shall perish. We have one planet, and it's not like we have any backups. We need to work to change our ways, and we need to do so immediately. I did not want to come off as attacking as I am, but I hope that harsh words can be enough to call attention to the huge issues in computing and environmental issues that we are blatantly ignoring. In the United States, which we are believed to be one of the larger producers of e-waste in the world, it's been estimated that 100 million computers, monitors, and televisions become obsolete each year, and this trend is just continuing to grow. Each year, 130 million mobile devices in the United States and 105 million mobile devices in Europe reach the end of their rope and then are discarded, along with all the resources that it took to make them. The United Nations estimates that the world total generates 20 to 50 million tons of e-waste every single year. We are improperly disposing of we are properly disposing of them when we do take the time to do so. Improper recycling methods in China of e-waste, let me draw attention to the word improper, has left the ground spiked with toxicity due to higher levels of heavy metals and other chemicals caused by uncontrolled acid discharge. China is just one of the other countries who is experiencing damage from e-waste. Asian countries such as the Philippines, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Pakistan, Malaysia, and Vietnam are targets for dumping for e-waste. There's also been dumping in Africa as well. Nigeria, Kenya, Senegal, and Ghana are becoming latest targets for dumping because these, by more advanced economies, our responsibility, with stricter environmental regulations. E-waste contains brominated flame retardants that are used to print circuit boards, connectors, converters, and cables. Urbanized areas have been found to have some concentrations of chemicals like the polybrominated biphenyls and polybrominated diphenyls. These increase breast, cervical, and uterine cancer in women. As well, for both men and women, they include sexual, skeletal, and mental developmental disorders. These chemicals tend to affect children more than any other age group, and due to the trend of child labor in developing countries, we are exposing children to harmful concentrations of chemicals that can stunt their mental, physical, and sexual reproductive health. Since these concentrated levels of chemicals are found around e-waste sites, this could also present an issue to the general population at large where these e-waste sites are present. Even the United States has areas within ourselves that have concentrated exposure areas, especially when it comes to the production of computing. And this just further shows we need to change our production and disposal methods in computing to make it less hazardous for the environment during its production, use, and disposal. Environmental damage can wreak havoc on our innovation, prosperity, and health across nations because we have become globalized and internationalized like never before. Environmental damage can be catastrophic for economies worldwide. If we create an unstable planet, then we will have unstable production and manufacturing methods. Due to time constraints, I cannot break down how each type of environmental catastrophe and the potential damage it has to our productivity. I will just describe how we become globalized over the last few decades, and the gravity of these realizations should be enough to underline how important it is that we begin to take the steps to protecting our environment and the human species. It wasn't until a couple decades ago, especially with the advent of the internet and our massive communication systems, that we started to have more globalization in our economies. We have more multinational M&Es companies than ever before, and companies are now going to the internet and internationalizing quicker, faster, and more effectively due to better communication tools. With our economies becoming interdependent, we need to begin to transcend the barriers that we have set within our societies against each other. Age, race, gender, and nationalities are all things that we use to separate and classify ourselves. However, we all share the same human spirit and the same planet. For now, my last topic of discussion before I get to my closing remarks will be the environmental danger. Environmental issues are always very hot topics in a discussion. There will be people disputing and throwing conflicting facts back and forth and basically trying to out-fact check each other. I'm not an expert in these things, but I did grow up watching Ferngully. I care about the environment, and I want to protect it for the future. I've written this speech using primarily .org, .gov, and .edu websites and tried to keep my data within 5 years to meet academic standards and credibility. I even went as far to check the WHOIS records of any slanted websites to make sure that I could see who was making it. I did, to the best of my ability, did not want to present misconstrued data. I'm conflicted, honestly, on global warming. There are books, articles, and scientists contending on both sides of the stage, and since we've only been collecting environmental data for since maybe 1880s, we've been recording sea levels, we could easily misconstrue data. We can easily misconstrue the way things are actually being. But it doesn't mean that environmental damage is not happening. I'm not a doctor yet. And I haven't seen these things myself first, and I haven't collected that data myself. I vote on the side of whatever makes it so that this planet is inheritable, livable, and safe for the future. I want to see recycling because I think it's cost-effective and resource-saving, in addition to being more environmentally friendly. I want to see renewable energies for all the benefits that I have listed. We need to realize that we are part of an ecosystem and need to quit this almost arrogant, human-centric belief that the destruction of it won't impact the life of every single person on this planet. Just because previous human eras didn't fully comprehend the effects of what they did to the world around them does not mean we have the right to act so blind or coy. For example, we once saw building smokestacks as a sign of a productive economy, but they were releasing heavy emissions and toxins into the air. It is incredibly foolish of us to continue to ignore what is happening to our planet. We know that the Earth goes through natural heating and cooling periods. However, it's been contended heavily that due to the industrialization of the planet, we are experiencing an abnormal spike in temperature. The waters are now expanding due to thermal expansion because they themselves are absorbing some of the carbon dioxide emissions that we have, and the melting of the glacier and polar ice caps and ice from Greenland and the West Arctic. We have actually seen some ice return to Antarctica recently, as it's grown in ice size during its freezing period. This could also be contributed to the shrinking of the hole in the ozone layer. In 2012, it was the smallest that it has been in the last 20 years. 2 years, and then you imagine what's happening to Antarctica. It's coming back. This just shows that eco-friendly initiatives are saving this planet. Unfortunately, we still have many things to work on. Deforestation, massive and soon to be threatening levels of overfishing, and widespread tremendous depletions in fish and aquatic life that is wreaking havoc within that ecosystem will be soon affecting ours. The continued pollution of our waters and the removing of mountain caps and huge portions of forest for the mining of coal, the occasional oil spill, and the destruction of plant and animal life in the process are all things that we can get a handle on. And if we don't, we will see the effects in our way of life. I wish I had a longer presentation for all of these items, but this is where I have to begin drawing things to a close. For a quick example, though, I would like to mention that one of the contributing factors to Hurricane Katrina's damage so many years ago was the already pre-existing destruction of the Gulf systems. The chandelier, originally being built from its connection to the Mississippi River, was weakened before Katrina hit. Normally, they act as a buffer to large-scale hurricanes and storm surges, but Katrina ripped away 85% of this buffer when it hit due to its weakened state. Katrina hit harder because in addition to improper handling of that entire situation, but environmental damage also contributed. We are beginning to get a taste of our own medicine when it comes to environmental damages. Technology is an established field now. We are the field that's used by everyone else just to do this job. This means we bear the responsibility of progress. Any person in any form of computing and technology has to begin shifting their focus on the way that we view technology and its advancement. To bring a more active focus to the environmental damage that our technology is creating can bring a focus to the environment overall. By simply changing aspects of our computing, we could have ripple effects across all of manufacturing, production, and the livability of our world due to the high rate of computing in other industries. I don't want to paint a bleak future for us, but if we don't start addressing what is happening to the world around us due to the management of our technologies, our waste and energy consumption as we continue to grow, then these issues will only compound. We can reuse our items. Stop throwing away your old phone every time Apple makes a new release. And purchase more energy-conserving devices. As technologists, we can work to make our devices and data management systems more efficient. We can make subtle changes in our production processes so we can change the resources that are actually going into it. We need to promote better education to the general public about these issues in computing, and addressing them first ourselves is a step we need to take. The future, innovation, and technology will advance. It is up to us to take cues from what our planet, our society, and what our era is experiencing to move forward as effectively as possible. We must work diligently to correct the mistakes of the past while creating a more prosperous future for those who come after us. I can be approached or whatever after this is done, and we can continue this discussion. But another heavy concern of mine is actually open source educational tools, and I devote much of my time to these. I'm working to create educational styles of deployable after-school programs, and one of those will be taking a focus on clean computing. My after-school program won't be available until next year, but they would be a hybrid between teaching children about technology's impact on the world, how environmental and weather systems work, and also addressing the environmental damages. I want children to explore technology with a different future than what we think it is. To deny children the knowledge of what is actually actively happening to the world that they will inherit is wrong. If they grow up thinking with innovation, creativity, and learning about how technology can save the world instead of hindering it, that's exactly what they do. I guess we can break down for a small Q&A session, but if you have any other questions or would like to further discuss these, the topics that I've mentioned here, feel free to do so. I've decided to write a book on this subject, and am looking for constructive criticism, input, and the possibilities of expansion on any of the key areas that I've mentioned here today. To be slightly informal, and this is not as much to the audience, but I know this is recorded and it will be going out onto the internet, but I don't want haters and stupid slack-jawed waste of protoplasm comments from people. I'm done. These issues need to be addressed, and we need to stop playing around with it. I will be around for the conference, and I have pink dreads, so it should be really easy to find me. I'll be standing outside the room after this talk is done to continue this discussion on any topics. I guess we can open up for the Q&A session.